Hello everybody, my name is Alphonse, and this is Magic the Gathering, but not me drafting, but rather reviewing someone else who drafted. Just to give some background, a friend of mine, Darren, recently got into drafting on Magic the Gathering Arena, and so me, wanting to see my friend improve at drafting, told him, hey, send me your drafts so I can give you feedback on them. So he did. He sent me this quick draft that he recorded through 17 lands, which, by the way, every Magic the Gathering Arena person who drafts use this program. It's amazing. And so we're just going to take a look over it. He did end up with a pretty good green-white deck, but I do think that interesting to note that I feel like he missed out on a very potent direction that he could have taken. So without a way, I'll go ahead and walk through what I would pick out of a pack, and once it gets like a little like midway through the thing, I'll give a passing mention to what I would pick in the colors that that Darren was in. But anyway, let's just go ahead and jump into things. Here's pack 1, pick 1. I see there's a Flame Skull, and I'm pretty convinced that this card is just great, like B+ great. It's just very aggressive and good at being aggressive, which a lot of red decks tend to want to do in this format. And sure, it's bad when you are behind, because it can't block, but it's pretty reasonable to amazing at any other point in the game. So I'm pretty high on picking that. If this wasn't in the pack, I would have picked up Grim Bounty, because it's just a premium black removal. As far as the first pick that Darren did go with, I'm not too high on Purple Worm personally. It can be decent. It's a big thing, hard to remove. But in a format like this where the early game matters the most, I'm not fond of locking in this really big, beefy, non-evasive thing as my first pick. So that's just me. So in summary, Flame Skull for sure, and then if it wasn't a pack, then Grim Bounty. Here, pack 2. So I see that there is a Grim Bounty here, and I'm like, yo, let's just snatch up this black removal right now. That's fantastic. Great stuff. However, I do want to note that there is only one green card in the pack, and it is a pretty good green card at that. Hill Giant Herdgorger. Very useful for green decks, because a lot of them want to get to them big beefy beaters that overtake the more aggressive early drops of other decks. So it's definitely possible in the in-person draft with other players that there's an angle where you want to take the one green card and try to lock in green for yourself, which can be a very useful strategy. But me personally, I think the gulf between these two is a little too high, with Grim Bounty being much more premium than Herdgorger, that I'd probably just pick up Grim Bounty still. But there's definitely merit to still picking the only green card, especially if it's still a pretty good green card. So Grim Bounty is going to the deck. Pick 3. Here I see that there's a 2-mana removal spell in Burning Hands, and I want to pick that up. It's definitely nothing like Dragon's Fire, but it's still pretty reasonable. It'll deal with most of the 1 and 2 drops in this format, so I think it's just worth picking up here. As far as going green, I do just want to mention that I don't necessarily know if this is the appropriate place to pick up Prosperous Innkeeper, because it doesn't really do too much by itself in terms of trading. Even if its effect can be like marginally useful, only really pops off with those life gain payoffs, which we don't know if we'll find any of those just yet. In terms of green, I probably would have picked up Owlbear personally, but honestly, in just a little exercise, if I'm choosing a card out of this pack, it would be Burning Hands. Let's go to pick 4. Pick 4 here. I see this is a really difficult toss-up actually, because my eyes go to both Grim Bounty and Hobgoblin Captain, and it's really this is definitely gonna be sure, you can honestly go either way and still be a pretty good pick. Me personally, I'm high enough on having 2 drops, just because the tax of having to pay 4 mana on removal spell is real enough that I just personally prefer picking up the 2-drop and just make sure I have as many of those early creatures as I can. I definitely would not fault you for going any direction though in regards to these picks at this time in pick 4. There is still the green angle where Null Hunter is definitely the standout green here, so it's could be worth picking up Null Hunter, and then everyone's like, all this green stuff is underwhelming. Let's not pick green. That definitely is a strategy to do, and Null Hunter is a very good card for green decks to have for sure. Very good value there. So again, in terms of if you want to go with that strategy of locking down green, picking up Null Hunter here is pretty decent. But for my interest, which is just making a baller deck, I do want to go with the Hobgoblin Captain, not only because of the reasons I mentioned, just to have those early creatures, but also just considering that we have a Burning Hands and especially a Flame Skull. We already have a lot of premium red stuff compared to black, which just has Grim Bounty. And honestly, you do want to see if you can run Grim Bounty, because red-black is probably the best color pair in the set. But, it's important to keep yourself flexible, and me personally, I prefer a lot of the red color pairs compared to the black color pairs. So yeah, I'd pick Hobgoblin Captain here. Pick 5. Here, it's definitely going to be between You See a Pair of Goblins and Plundering Barbarian. Me personally, just given that I've drafted both red and black so far, I'm maybe a smidge higher on Plundering Barbarian, just because it's either ramp or it can deal with any premium equipments that an opponent may have, because in best of 1, equipments are definitely a very easy way to run over an unprepared opponent. So yeah, these two are pretty equal in level, I'd say, and if you had to be in a very unfortunate situation where you have to first pick one of these, I would probably just first pick You See a Pair of Goblins, because in a vacuum that's just very handy. But yeah, with the kind of cards we drafted, I'm feeling the Plundering Barbarian personally. On to pick 6. So here I see our second Hobgoblin Captain. That's pretty gas. I want to just pick up the 2-drops. For sure. Wanty Fangblade is pretty good, but I'll hold off on picking that until I know for certain I'm black for sure. Because technically right now it's just mostly red and one great black card, which in draft this early just means that we're probably going to be red. We should aim to be red, but we don't know what our other color is. As an aside, at this point in the draft, pick 6. 50 feet of rope, it is colorless, sure, but the cost of the mana sink is pretty significant. I do not know how good picking up 50 feet of rope is at this point, especially when you want to make sure you scoop up your 1 and 2 drops. So that's just me. Just get our second Hobgoblin Captain, be pretty happy with that. Got a nice aggressive red thing going. Here, I see our first cue that black is going to be a good direction to go, because there's a Shambling Ghast, amazing card for black decks to have. This is going to contest so many of the 1 and 2 drops in the format. It's just so useful. Yeah, so I like picking that up. There's Sylvan Shepherd here, which is probably the most medium green card that I just want to pick for being the only green card in the pack, but it can do work for sure. So, but yeah, for me personally, I can't pass up a Shambling Ghast. It's just a very potent card. Also, in this case, it is the only black card in the pile, so that's kind of mildly significant. But it just matters more that Shambling Ghast is a great card. Also, there's a Plate Armor in the pack, which is very interesting. I guess it could be possible to also go down this path, just be red-white equipments, but I do want to sip on the red-black Kool-Aid a little more, because I feel like that has the most leeway for a more powerful deck. So Shambling Ghast for me here. This pack is a pretty big dud for red-black for sure. So I'd probably just pick up the Kick in the Door, because it's the only one in red, and just call it off. Green decks definitely like having Elterguard Ranger, not as much as Owlbear or in the other late green drops, but in a shortage of those, Ranger will do some pretty solid work in a pinch. There's that. Pick 9. So at this point I see that there is a Check for Traps and an Evolving Wilds. I've been pretty impressed by Check for Traps, not gonna lie. This would probably be the card that I'd pick up at this point. Also noticing that the black card is still around. I've found this card pretty solid, especially for disruption purposes. And just knowing what's coming in your opponent's hand, you get to play around things much more easily. So I'm a pretty high on check for traps. We can go ahead and put that into the deck. Ka-chow, pick 10. Here, definitely any of these black and red cards are pretty good. As is Dungeon Map, the only card I wouldn't be too impressed by is Divine Smite, honestly. Just because, sure, it's good against the color that'll probably be pretty common in this format, but when you're not targeting that color, it's very, very mediocre. It's kind of equivalent to, like, a tap effect, I suppose. So, yeah, not too high on Divine Smite personally. In terms of what I pick up here, given that we do have a pretty solid black-red base, I do want to get this Price of Loyalty now, because if there's something like a Sepulcher Ghast, I think it's called, or Sepulcher Ghoul, that sounds about right, or a Skullport Merchant, basically your sack outlets, then Price of Loyalty stomps go way up, because it's so crazy that you can just like take a big beefy creature opponent's end, attack with it, then sack it later before they gain it back. So yeah, I'd probably pick up the Price of Loyalty here. Pretty solid, even though basically everything in this pack except for Divine Smite is pretty solid. Pick 11. Here definitely could, between the two black cards, Vampire Spawn probably just gets the pick because it is something that you can get into play earlier. Plus it gains life gain, so in case you end up against some annoying aggro deck, this can help you out a little bit. So there's that. Pick 12. Here Dungeon Crawler comes pretty late, like it ended up wheeling. I poo-pooed on this card a lot during spoiler season, but in practice it's actually pretty handy because it's a card you can play on 1 that competes with 1 and 2 drops, and that's kind of a big deal in a format where 2 drops matter so much. So I'd actually pick up the Dungeon Crawler here, even if it's really bad, like turn 3 or 4 onwards. I think its usefulness in the early turns is worth picking up right now, especially compared to Hired Hexblade, which is not only like sort of medium, but it's a common, so it's more likely to show up later. Pack 13, nothing for our deck really. We can just scoop up any card here. Find a Cursed Idol will probably be useful in the green deck if you don't have any early 2 drops. So yeah. And pick 14, none too useful. Plummet's definitely super sideboard. And so now comes to the part where not only will I talk about what cards I'd pick up for this red, probably red-black deck that we're constructing, but also what cards I would pick up given the green direction that Darren is going. So, let me just get a drink. Let's go on to pack 2. So here, there's a Froghemoth. I never played with this card before, but I imagine it's pretty good, and probably would be what I pick up if I were in green, just because the threat is there, and it seems pretty solid in that regard. However, for our red shenanigans, there's not a lot of red uncommons that can compete with Red Dragon. I love this thing. I played with it a few times early in the format, and I just love having this big beefy flyer that can already deal some face damage to the opponent. So yeah, I found this card pretty solid. I definitely pick up Red Dragon here. Pick 2. Here, me personally, I probably would pick up our 3rd Hobgoblin Captain, Hala. Love seeing all those early red drops. Just very useful. I think my friend did make a right call and pick up Null Hunter from this pack. Just get all those green early drops. Get all those aggressive boys. Anything that can help you get to your later cards. So, yeah. Oakley dokley. Pack 3. So here, for me, nothing here is too nifty, but there's a Lightfoot Rogue, which, sure, it's kind of unfortunate that Death Touch can't be on defense, but it's still a 2-drop. It'll definitely trade with stuff, And hey, sometimes when you attack, you'll roll a natural 20, and your opponent's like, what? I have to deal with 5 damage or just trade? So I think this is marginal enough to run. I would be surprised if it's something you cut later. So, yeah. As far as what I think Darren could have picked up, I feel like Direwolf Prowler is like a very mediocre card. It looks very underwhelming. If you want to stay in green, Find the Path is kind of marginal, but I personally would also notice that there is a Minimus Containment here, and I'm like, oh, that is a pretty good white removal. So there's that. So I'm kind of curious to see if Minimus Containment would have been handy for Darren's deck. All right, pick 4. Here I see that there is a Rust Monster in the pack. Probably would be what to grab myself because none of the other red-black cards here are too major. So yeah, there's that. Rust Monster is probably the appropriate thing to pick up here. And also on the side for Darren is that at this point, green-red beats would still be a possibility. So it's possible. In that case, Rust Monster would still put in work. Something that always has First Strike on is always more of a hassle to deal with than limited than expected. So yeah, I'm also picking up Rust Monster, and it was probably the most appropriate pick for Darren to pick up at this point in time. Here, in terms of our deck, probably the most reasonable one to get would just be Deadly Dispute. This is just great card advantage for black, especially since you can just sack treasures. It's kind of groovy in that regard. For Darren though and his green path, this Moon Dancer is a huge deal to hit up on, and it's kind of a big signal that, oh, maybe I can go this green-white direction and do some life gain payoffs. So yeah, this is definitely a correct pick on Darren's in the context of his exact draft. Well, for me, I'd probably pick up Deadly Dispute to build this very cool red-black machine. Anyway, let's go on to pick 6. Pick 6 here, there's nothing really too valuable for my deck. I'd probably just snatch up a Vampire Spawn, just be like, alright. There's a Cleric class here, though, for Darren, and which is a pretty big thing to get after getting the Trelasara. So yeah, it's a pretty solid pickup for Darren. For me personally, this card is definitely pretty gas for green-white, especially if you have a lot of ways to gain life. But I don't know if it's a card worth splashing for. I can't tell if it's powerful enough for that. I usually feel like splashes in this format tend to be for only very, very nutty cards. So yeah. Pick 7. There's a second Cleric class, which is like, geez, Darren's luck, seriously, crazy. But for me, I do see that there's an Army Veteran, not as good of a 2-drop for red-black as the Hobgoblin Captain, but hey, it's still a 2-drop. So I just picked it up there for my deck, and I think Darren did make the right call picking up the second Cleric class, even though Priest of Ancient Lore is also a pretty competitive pick as well. I feel like these are both kind of equal in power level. One is kind of great by itself in a vacuum, while Cleric class can get nutty really easily if you have all the life gain payoffs, which, I mean, I guess in this context, I guess you don't really have as much as you'd like, so maybe Priest of Ancient Lore might have been the more appropriate pick here, but it's definitely a toss-up in this particular situation. So yeah, let's go on to pick 8. Here, I would personally pick up just a Hoarding Ogre. Hoarding Ogre is going to be pretty nice, making all our treasures to just enable a bunch of ramping or treasure synergies, so there's that. In Darren's context, given that he's green-white, I feel like he probably should have just picked the plate armor here. Even if you're not playing any other equipments, what you get for equipping this onto a creature is kind of crazy value. This +3/+3 is such a big boost to a creature's power, and it also just gains Ward 1 as well, making it really hard to get rid of, or annoying to get rid of, rather. So I feel like this would have been a better pickup here than Half-Elf Monk. Just my 2 cents. On to pick 9. Definitely nothing here that we'd play. There'd probably be just a spare dagger goes in the sideboard, and Horde Gorge is definitely a good thing for Darren to see at this moment. Just having all the big beefy creatures with life gain to pop off all the cleric classes and the Moon Dancer. So yeah, there's that. Pick 10. Here, nothing too valuable. We just pick up an unexpected I just pick up an unexpected windfall. See if that goes anywhere. While Gloomstalker was probably the correct pick here, but it's definitely pretty cuttable for a green-white deck, I feel like. Pick 11. Here, nothing too useful. We'll put in You Find Some Prisoners, but we probably will want to not run it in the main deck. So there's that. Find a path that's decent enough. Hopefully Darren won't have to run this and all that. Pick 12. Duds for me. For Darren, Keen-Eyed Sentry can work in a pinch if you're short on 2-drops. Pick 13. More duds for me. Potion of Healing technically does work, at least cantrips, but it still doesn't change the fact that it's not a creature, so it's not as great as it would seem. Even though, like, for a deck with life gain payoffs, it's nice to have ways to gain life. So Potion of Healing does that decently enough. And pick 14, there's a half-elf monk that I don't care about, and I imagine Darren would hope not to run this card in his main deck. Pack 3. So, here. So there was a Burning Hands. It would be my second one. But the thing is that I already have some premium removal as is between like the Burning Hands and a Grim Bounty. So I don't necessarily know, and I feel like that's like honestly pretty good enough removal as is. Also potential Price of Loyalty if we find a sack outlet later. But I noticed that there's a Mind Flayer, and I feel like my deck might reach playable numbers, but just in case, just being able to grab the flashy bomb card and being able to play it just due to being in a color that has a lot of treasures is pretty handy. So I'd actually be willing to speculate a little, run the Mind Flayer here. In the context of Darren's draft, Planar Ally is definitely pretty decent. I do wonder if the pick here is supposed to be Portable Hole, because just removal is pretty useful. And I'm just trying to look here. I don't think he has too much removal at this point, if I remember correctly. So, yeah. Okay. Yeah, basic just for Darren, Portable Hole could have been a better pick here. While for me, just gonna speculate on Mind Flayer. We'll see if we can run. We'll see if we'll need to run it. But yeah, pick 2. I see that there's a Grim Bounty. Mamma mia! Pretty solid stuff there. Pretty happy to pick up a second Grim Bounty. That's gas. For Darren here, I don't necessarily know if Druid class is the place to be. This card just has looked very underwhelming. Anytime I see an opponent play this, I'm like, alright, sure, I really don't care. It just does so little for most of the game, and then, like, it'll sometimes become a creature, but it's typically too late by then. Often, in most circumstances at least, so I'm kind of low on Druid class. In terms of the green cards, I just see Hunter's Mark and Spoils of the Hunt I think would have been much better picks. Probably Hunter's Mark just because that's a guaranteed boost compared to Spoil the Hunt's conditional boost. So yeah. As a side, Tiger Tribe Hunters here, and it could be interesting. I think if I were streaming, then I'd be like, huh, I never played Tiger Tribe Hunter before. I want to try it out. But just for sake of an informational video, I think Grim Bounty is the correct pick to pick here on my end. So there's that. Pick 3! I do once more see that there's several decent options for us. Shambling Gas is the one that sticks out to me the most, with Death Priest in the running, alongside a Plundering Barbarian afterwards. Definitely of the two, I would pretty equally. Both are definitely pretty solid. I think just me being very aware that like not having anything to play early is a death sentence in this format, I'd probably just pick up the Shambling Ghast personally. So that's what I'd go with. This card is definitely very decent. though. It is very impressive. This can form a pretty decent army a lot of the times, but I think just for sake of wanting to make sure I have as many early drops as possible, Shambling Gas for me. And I think for Darren, this was a really good time to pick up this You Find Something on Watch. So, yeah, because removal, even if it is a little conditional and reactive, is still pretty solid. Especially for 2 mana. Here, for me, I see it's a Valor Stinger, and I'm like, alright, I'll pick that up. This card has been pretty decent for me. Like, Combat Professor from Strixhaven was kind of nutty. This is not as nutty as that, but still having an attack boost to give to an aggressive deck is just very useful. So, there's that. I do think that Darren was correct in picking up a Sylvan Shepherd, though. Just to have that. So, yeah. Also just more life gain for all the life gain payoffs, too. Is pretty goog. So, yeah. Basic gist. I'd pick up Valor Singer. I think Darren was correct in picking up Sylvan Shepherd in this particular pack. Here, I see there's the Kalane, and I'm like, oh la la, good stuff. So, yeah, I'm definitely very satisfied to see that in the pack. And so that's probably what I'd probably pick up. I think Darren was correct in pick up the Steadfast Paladin here. So yeah, basically for me, Kalane. For Darren, Steadfast was the good pick. Here, this is a pretty dud pack for me. I'll just pick up Eye Beholder. I pretty soon I don't have to run it though, because I already have good enough removal as is. That's good for me. Darren was correct in pick up Prosperous Innkeeper at this point. Now that he knows he has all this life gain payoffs, it makes all of the creatures that Darren have their own life gains. So that's pretty solid there. Okay, so here pick 7. Let's see, there's this Inspiring Bard that I think was definitely correct for Darren to pick up here. For me, I think I would pick up, it's a definitely toss up between Check for Traps and Thieves' Tools, but I'd probably just pick up Check for Traps because, again, I've been pretty impressed by this card myself. So, yeah, in summary, Check for Traps for me, Darren was correct in pick up Inspiring Bard for his deck. Pick 8. I see, yes, Sepulchre Ghoul. Gas, we have a sack outlet. Amazing. I definitely happily picked this up. This card has put in a whole bunch of work, especially in conjunction with Price of Loyalty. So I'm pretty happy to pick up Sepulchre Geist here. Not Geist, cool. Whoops. For Darren, Keen-Eyed Sentry is probably the correct pick here. You obviously don't hope to run all the Keen-Eyed Sentries, but it do be like that. Pick 9. Here, nothing too useful. I'm trying to remember. It's definitely tossed between Unexpected Windfall and the You Come to a Null Camp. So, there's that. I think just pick up the Unexpected Windfall here. Hopefully I don't have to run it. And Find the Path is definitely something that Darren hopes to not have to run, but we'll work in a pinch. Pick 10. Nothing too valuable. There's a Thief's Tools. We'll see if we can run that. It's been pretty nifty for black decks. At worst, it's just a mana dork, technically, because it makes a treasure token. But yeah, it's can also be pretty handy for getting through damage. So there's that. Darren was correct in pick up Disposal in here. Just having removal is very useful. And pick 11. Here I see another, Shambling Gas would have been what I picked up earlier, so just assuming. So for me personally, probably not really too useful here. I just like pick up something, put on the sideboard. Herd Gorger is a really good thing to see for Darren though. I think I would probably run all 3 Herd Gorgers. Would not be surprised if your top end is only the Herd Gorgers and your 5 drops and you just cut out the Plated Worm entirely. But yeah. Pick 12, Feign Death, or Barbarian Class. Neither of these matter, you're not going to run them. And then also here, pretty dud pick. And here, dud pick. So, as a little bit of a spoiler, I kind of went through skimmed through this beforehand because I wanted to show you the process of cutting cards out from what you picked. So let's just pull this up here. Boom shakalaka, amazing. I think I might have also goofed during a part of the process. I think there's a point when there's a Temple of the Dragon guide in pack 1. Let me just make sure here. It might have been here. Oh yeah, here's the part where I said nothing here too matters, but I'm like, oh wait, there's a Temple of the Dragon Queen here. That probably would have been the pick just to help with splashing. So yeah, honestly, land picks, any of the lands that help with fixing have been pretty valuable. So that's the one goof. Yeah. All right, moving on to the actual process of cutting cards from decks. So now we have all this. We generally want to keep as many of our early drops as possible. Obviously, if we end up running to some duds, we can get rid of those there. So first up, let's just start down the line. Eye of the Beholder definitely gets the cut. I think we have more than enough removal there. Let's keep Red Dragon's definitely for sure staying in. I feel like we might have enough early stuff that I don't think we'll need Unexpected Windfall, so for the time being, I'll just cut it out there. I'll keep Mind Flayer, just in case we need it. Although I'm actually looking at this deck, I don't think we'll need it. We managed to draft a lot of really good early drops in this end, so that's pretty amazing in that regard. So let's actually just cut that out, just to clear our heads, make this as less complicated than before. So yeah, here. Oh yeah, also cut, as we're going down the list, you find some prisoners, definitely not going to make the cut there. And now here is the part where things get interesting. I think of the cards we have in our deck, I definitely err on keeping most of our creatures, especially early, but there'll definitely come to a point where like we already have the most premium of the non-creatures, and we'll have to cut through some creatures just to get to the good old 24 main deck, because it's the one land plus the 23 non-lands. Anyway, so here we do have a Price of Loyalty. I am curious, and we do have Sepulchre Ghoul, but I am curious if like you're not supposed to run the Price of Loyalty in this scenario, because it just could be on the low side, because you only have the one sack outlet. I feel like, I don't know if it's necessarily a one-to-one relationship. I know some people probably picture that, but me personally, my comfort level is not that high enough to want to just have a Price of Loyalty for every sack outlay I have. So in the interest of making some cuts, Price of Loyalty is probably going to get the boot for me. And oh wow, I only have to make one more cut. For some odd reason, I thought I had to make way more cuts than that. I think this is a pretty easy place to take out. The choices would be either Check for Traps, Deadly Dispute, or Armory Veteran. Given how our deck is, I actually would not be surprised if I would want to cut the Armory Veteran. Let's just count how many creatures we have before we come to that decision. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Okay, so we have more than enough creatures without the Armory Veteran, I'd say. So I'm pretty comfortable giving that the boot. Especially because I think Check for Traps just does so much work. Especially we have 2. That's like amazing. So yeah, at the end of things, we have this like really aggressive curve. We have, let's see, 3 one drop plays, which is way more than your average limited deck actually. So that's kind of nutty. And then a whole bunch of 2 drops, like 3, like things I consider as 2 drops, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 2 drops is very cool. And then just a general curve, and we keep our top end as little yet as significant as possible. Like Red Dragon is really nice top end here. So yeah, also plus the red dragon enables Temple of the Dragon Queen to come in untapped, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, that's pretty gas. Alright, so that's the basic gist. Again, Darren did end up with a pretty cool green-white deck that I'm pretty certain he told me it went 6-3. But hey, I'm always wanting to look out for ways to draft the best deck that you can, and that's why I wanted to make this video, because not only did I think would be good for him, but I think it would be useful for a lot of people as a whole. So anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. If you enjoyed the content, please like, comment, subscribe, and spread the word. See ya!